Now I'm going to make reference to all of these buttons as well as the input. Inside the JavaScript file, the popup.js, session start equals to document get element by ID, and then we have the ID start session. And I'm going to do the same for the other two buttons. The second one is remove session, and the ID is remove session here as well. Get session info. Finally, we need also to make reference to the input. So here I'm gonna paste this as well and change this to session period input as well as the ID. So now that we have reference to all of these tags, what we need to do is that we need to add functionality for the start session, remove session, and get session info. And I'm gonna start with the start session button. So for the start session button, what we need to do is that once the user clicks on the start session, it's going to get the value from the input and checks the value. If the value is less than 0, then it's going to tell the user that then the value must be greater than 0. And if the value is greater than 120 minutes, which means 2 hours, then it's also going to tell the user that the value can't be above 120. Of course, it's up to you to choose the maximum limit. And once the value is valid, it's going to start counting down until the value goes down to 0. Once the value goes down to 0, all of the tabs will be closed so that the user cannot surf the internet after this period. So what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to use the start session and then add event listener as we did before, and then click and the function. Now the most important thing is inside the callback function. What we need to do here in the callback function is to get the value from the session period input. So I'm going to get that value. How are we going to get that value? It's very simple. You use the session input, this, and then value. And you can store this inside a local variable if you wish. Let session input but this value is a string. We want to make this value an integer to make our work easier with the if statement. So here I'm going to use the parse int so that we convert this value to an integer. So now this value is an integer, and we can do our operation with the if statement. With the if statement here, I'm going to use the session value, and then if that value is less than 0, less or equals 0, then we are going to tell the user that the user can't use a negative value. The value, the number of minutes must be greater than 0. And then if the value, else if the value is greater than 120, then we want also to tell the user that the value can be greater than 120. Again, this value, you can change this value to whatever you want. You can make your limit even 1000 minutes, but I wouldn't recommend that. I would recommend something like that, 120, or even 3 hours, 180. And then alert, you can't browse for more than 2 hours. And then the else, inside the else, what we need to do here is the most important thing. And here inside the else, the most important thing, which is we need to get this value, the session value, and add it to our countdown function. And which function we are going to use? Well, Google Chrome APIs have a class called alarm, which will make our job much easier by using the alarm given by Google Chrome APIs. So it's Chrome dot alarms dot create, and it takes two parameters. The first one is a string of the name of that alarm. You can name it whatever you want, maybe session 1. And then the second parameter is an object with some properties to create an alarm. And the property that we are going to use is called delay in minutes. And the value must be an integer with this value, the session value. And then colon here, semicolon. And I'm going to show you the Google Chrome API's alarms here. We have the alarms, and there is a permission here. We need to add this to our permissions. And the method that we used is called create, which here some explanation about it. And as you can see, it takes two parameters. The first one is an optional string, and the second one is an object with three properties. All of them are optional. The one that we used is delay in minutes, because after these minutes are gone, then the alarm will go off. This is why I'm using the delay in minutes. So it's kind of a countdown. And let's add the alarms to our permissions. So inside the manifest file here, I'm going to add in the permissions, I'm going to add the alarms. Let's save now and go to our browser. If I refresh our extension, and if here I insert 0 and then click start session, it's going to tell me the number of minutes must be greater than 0. And if I here add 130 start session, it's going to tell me you can't browse the internet for more than 2 hours. And let's add 1 minute start session. It's going to start, but we didn't add any alert or something like that. So let's add all of that so that we make sure that the alarm started.